Hello, everybody, and welcome. I am Bricker Boom, and it's Tier List Tuesday, y'all. So that means time for another tier list, and this one is different because it was actually something that had been requested by one of the comments that I had received. So we are going to be ranking all of the Dead by Daylight survivors based off of their 3 base perks that they receive. Now, ultimately, this doesn't mean much because you can now swap any perk with any person once you get them up to level 3. So we're just going to be going off if you are trying to get adept with this person, essentially. It doesn't mean much, but I thought it'd be fun to do, and somebody requested it, so naturally I have to do it. So starting off, we have Dwight. Now, with these, I'm just going to list the perks that they get and a brief description of them. I'm not going to go up into the distance that they receive or the percentages, nothing like that, because that would make this video take way too long. So you get, with Dwight, Bond, which allows you to see the auras of other survivors, Prove Thyself, which makes things a lot faster with Ginny Repair and any co-op actions. And then Leader, which means that healing, unhooking, and Sabo increases as well. I would say that because of that, it's an immediate S tier. We have seen a lot of people run Dwight squads, or at least people that have Prove Thyself in the Swift that I play in, and it immediately makes a huge difference in Ginny's, especially if the killer has some sort of generator regression or generator slowing add-on and or hex. This can make a huge difference in your gameplay. Next up is Meg, who has Quick and Quiet, which is kind of cool because when you vault or do a quick action, it doesn't make a noise. Sprint Burst, which is kind of bad. I don't like it personally because it requires you to walk more often than not. And then Adrenaline, which when the last gate is finished, or last generator is finished, you immediately heal a health state and go schmoovin'. Now, I didn't know this until I started reading into it, but if Freddy Krueger is the killer, it actually will wake you up from the dream world, which is kind of cool. Because of that, the reason that it's not going into S tier is simply just due to the fact of Sprint Burst. I think that it is very situational when it can be used, but Adrenaline and Quick and Quiet are both strong enough that it still deserves an A spot. Claudette. And these may be out of order just because of the website that I'm pulling them off of, so apologies. With Claudette, you have Empathy, which you can see the auras of survivors when they are injured or dying. Botany Knowledge, which increases your healing speed, and Self-Care, which is absolute garbage. Honestly, Self-Care is so bad that I am putting her into a B spot. Self-Care, I have never seen anybody be able to effectively use that. It may be more popular with the rework that they're doing to boons, but Self-Care, it takes so long to actually be able to use. It's not worth it. Unless you know that the killer is playing friendly and doesn't mind waiting for 15 minutes, or maybe they have a grocery trip they gotta make, they can probably do that and get back by the time you're finishing. Jake. Jake has Iron Will, which reduces the noises made while injured. Calm Spirit, which means crows may not give away your position as often. And while it's active, no sounds of pain. And then Saboteur, which means he doesn't need a toolbox to sabo a hook. I would say B tier as well. The no noises and stuff like that is fine, but the thing is, more often than not, if you run with a Swift, somebody is likely to have a boon, whether it be Shadow Step or Circle of Healing, so hopefully you won't be injured too long. The crow thing is kind of nice, but yeah, still I would say B tier. Mia gets balanced landing, which means she can fall from a great height and not have to deal with as much stagger. She doesn't grunt. After landing, she runs a lot faster. She gets urban evasion, which means while crouching, she can move faster. And then streetwise, which makes your items take longer to deplete. Honestly, all of those are pretty good. The only thing that sucks with balanced landing is that there are a couple maps where it won't come to use, like Auto Haven. There's nowhere that you can fall from there that I remember. So balanced landing is quite situational. However, the rest are pretty good. Because of that, I'll go ahead and give her an A tier. Laurie Strode, Soul Survivor is her first perk. Killer is unable to see her aura. Each time a killer is sacrificed, you get a token. For each token, it increases the aura in which you can't be seen. And then using the perk means you are more likely to become the killer's obsession. Object of Obsession, all action speeds increase by at least 200%, but you also have a greater chance of becoming the obsession. And then Decisive Strike. If you get unhooked and essentially tunneled out, you can, or attempted to be tunneled out, if you hit a skill check, they drop you. It has to be used within the first 40 seconds, though. That is one of the few times that I will actually provide, because it's very dependent on that time frame. The only thing that sucks is that once you use it, you become the obsession. Now, I'm sure in some gameplay there is a reason to become the obsession, but for the most part, you don't want to be the obsession. And Decisive Strike is good, and that's the only reason it's not going into D tier, but it is going to go into C tier, because becoming the obsession, depending on who your killer is, depending on what their challenge is, can easily make the game just absolutely awful. Ace has Up the Ante, which each survivor that's still in the trial, he gets a token to get a small boost in luck. Open-Minded, which increases the aura range, and Ace in the Hole, which means that you have a better chance of getting a rare item. That is okay. The only thing that sucks is the Up the Ante part. The more survivors that die, the less useful it becomes. So I would say C tier, personally, because the thing is, depending on the killer, depending on where the chests are, you may not even get the opportunity to go to chests, and I feel like a lot of people tend to ignore chests because it's a crapshoot. You don't know what it's going to get. In this, you still don't know what it's going to get. The only thing you know is that it has a good chance of being a very rare item. Bill. Left Behind. If you're the final survival in a trial, you can see the aura of the escape hatch. Pretty good. Borrowed Time. Once you unhook a survivor, they get endurance, and they won't enter the dying state if hit. And then finally, Unbreakable. During each trial, you get the chance to fully recover. That's pretty good. Honestly, all of those are very good. So because of that, I'm going to give it S tier. Depending on the killer, especially if they are trying to do a slug match, if you have Unbreakable and they leave you to go towards somebody else, it immediately gives you the opportunity to get up and hide. Fang Min. Honestly, pretty good perks. Technician means that the generator won't explode. Live, which means that once you perform a rushed vault, she runs 150% quicker. And then Alert. If a killer wrecks any breakables or kicks a Jenny, you can see their aura. All pretty strong perks. And the thing is, again, you can stack any of these with other perks, but since we have to go based off of those alone, I would say still a solid A tier. David King. We're gonna live forever, which means you get perks when the following actions are done. Rescuing a survivor, taking a protection hit, blinding the killer. With each token you have, you get more blood points. It's an okay thing if you are trying to get blood points. Once you get to a certain point, though, blood points don't really matter anymore. Especially after if you are trying to get all your killers and survivors up to level 3, Blood points can help, but the thing is, there's also offerings that you can bring in to just do the same thing without using a perk slot. Dead Hard, which is good because it allows you to essentially take another hit and get the speed boost because you took another hit. And then No Mither, which kind of sucks because you have the broken status on you for the entire match, but blood pools are suppressed, you make less noise while injured, his recovery gets a 15% boost, and when in the dying state, you can fully recover. Now, the problem with that is that more often than not, you are not going to be able to use No Mither effectively. If you are, kudos to you, but because We're Gonna Live Forever does run out of usefulness, and No Mither can be super difficult to use properly, he's gonna go into A tier. Quentin, Wake Up being the first perk, which means all exit gates within a certain radius are revealed. Kinda bad because you already get to see it at the beginning of the match. Just make sure you keep your head on a swivel, and after you've played the game for a while, you kinda have an idea of where the gates are always gonna be. If you're opening an exit gate, all your fellow survivors can see you within a certain radius, and then they do open at least 5% faster, which can actually be pretty good. Pharmacy, you open chests faster than normal, not great. And then the speed at which, and then finally Vigil, the speed at which you recover from status effects is increased. All survivors within a certain radius also benefit from it. And it'll continue even for a little bit after they leave your presence. Honestly, I'm gonna say B tier because unfortunately, Wake Up is good. However, if you're playing in a Swift, Wake Up, you could just tell your friends where the gate is. The 5% thing is about the only thing that doesn't have a timer on how useful it will be. Opening chests faster, okay, but it's fine. Like, I guess because it does contain an emergency medkit, that's okay, but eh. And then finally, Vigil. Yeah, it's great that you lose your status effects by 20% faster, but at the same time, just keep your head on a swivel. Alright, Detective Tippity Tap. You first off get Tenacity, which allows you to crawl 50% faster and regain health as you do. Detective's Hunch. When a Jenny is repaired, you get to see the auras of chest totems and other generators. And then Stakeout. When performing a good skill check, you consume a token that will turn it into a great. And then if you do a great skill check, no token is consumed. The only thing is you have to remain in the killer's terror radius for 15 seconds. So if you're good at chasing or you're really good at hiding, that can go very well for you. Both perks, or all three perks, I should say, are actually pretty solid. I am going to go ahead and give it an A tier. Kate Denson, Dance with Me, Darling. After you vault out a window, or locker, you won't leave scratch marks for a few seconds. Windows of Opportunity, it allows you to see the auras of walls, windows, and pallets. Now, the one thing that I will say about this, and this is just more of a be careful thing, for me, I don't like it because it opens up too much of the game, and this is coming from somebody who plays both Killer and Survivor. It's a lot at once. And then finally, Boil Over, which means that after you're captured by the killer, your struggling will make them sway even further. Honestly, I'm gonna give that an S tier because the Boil Over being that OP, knowing where all the things are, if you can keep track of all that in your head is super nice, and then not leaving scratch marks after vaulting out a window or locker, also pretty solid because it'll allow you to leave the killer. Alright, so with that, we're moving on to Adam, or Francis, I think other people have called him. Hello, Kitty. Do you want to be a star? This is Sherlock Holmes. He is my baby, and I am not opposed to using my animals for views. For every subscriber that I get from this video, he gets one extra cat treat. Adam Francis. Diversion, which means... Adam Francis, which means that he gets Diversion, which means he has to stay in the killer's terror radius, which you have the option to throw a pebble to distract them, which is kind of nice. And it actually displays false scratch marks or gives you the noise notification as a killer to be able to distract you. Deliverance, which means your self unhook attempts never fail. The only thing that sucks is that after you unhook yourself, you suffer from the broken status effect. Auto direct, which means that each time you successfully complete a skill check when healing someone, you get a token, and you can hold up a max of 5. Each token gives you a boost to progression for successful skill checks when healing victims. Now, the only thing that sucks is at the start of the trial, you do take a -% to skill checks, but it's fine. It evens out at the end. Honestly, all pretty good tiers overall. I never really see people using Pebble. I have seen one person do it in a Swift, and it actually worked. So it's got its moments. I will say B tier just because of while the self unhook attempts never fail, being broken immediately makes it so you're gonna go down. Jeff has breakdown, which unhooking yourself breaks the hook. Kinda cool. Aftercare, which allows you to see up to 3 survivors of people you have rescued, or have rescued you, or healed you. The survivors can also see your aura. And then distortion. Now, I'm not a big fan of aftercare. Breakdown is kind of okay-ish, but ultimately it's going to go into A tier simply because distortion is really good. Now, the only thing that sucks about distortion, and I want y'all to keep this in mind, against the Skull Merchant, that's not going to work. Her drones will still pick you up and still hunt you down without any second thought about it. Jane is up next, and Jane has Solidarity, which means if you're injured and heal a survivor without a medkit, you are also healed about half of that. Poised, which means that after a Ginny is repaired, you leave no scratch marks for at least 6 seconds, which is actually good because more often than not, a killer is going to immediately head for the repaired Ginny unless they are in a chase with somebody else. So repairing a Ginny and then bolting is amazing. And then head on. You have to be in a locker for a few seconds, but if you rush out, the killer can actually be stunned. Honestly, all of those perks are very solid, and I've seen a lot of people get a lot of use out of head on, so because of that, she's gonna go into S tier. Alright, next up we have Ash. One of my friends loves playing Ash. Baby Rhino, if you're watching this is your shout out. But Ash has flip-flop, which means that 50% of your recovery when you're knocked down turns into wiggle progression when picked up by the killer. So a lot of people are going to immediately head upstairs and start trying to recover because it'll just give you more time. Buckle up, which means that upon healing a survivor, both of you can see the killer's aura for a few seconds. And then Medal of Man. This only happens after you take your 3rd protection hit, but you become immune to the endurance status effect. Damage that would cause you to enter in an injured or dying state is blocked, and when at full health, the killer can see your aura if you are at least 12 meters away. That's a lot. Flip-flop is really good. Buckle up is okay. Medal of Man requires you to take a lot of extra hits, and depending on who the killer is, you may not be able to do that. Flip-flop is gonna at least keep it out of the C tier and make it a B tier. There will likely not be very many perks or characters, if any, that land in the D tier simply because most of them have at least one great perk that keeps them out of that tier. A lot of characters have really solid perks, especially if you know how to play the game. Next up is Nancy Wheeler. Nancy has Better Together, which if you're repairing a generator, other survivors can see its aura within a certain range. fixated, which means Nancy's walking speed is increased and she's able to see her own scratch marks, which is pretty good because it'll allow you to give an idea of how to potentially loop a killer. This only activates after cleansing a totem, but when hiding in a locker for a few seconds, you automatically heal if injured or suffering from the deep wound status effect. All are pretty solid. I cannot think of... The only thing that sucks is that the hiding in the locker part can kind of screw you over if you are playing as Dredge, or if they have Iron Maiden, because then you become exposed. But overall, most of those are pretty solid. Gonna go into S tier. Steve is interesting because every Steve I've met has been completely cracked out and does not give a single fuck to anything that's going on around them. They are absolute menaces, and I love them for it. But Steve gets the perks Babysitter, which means after unhooking a survivor, they won't leave pools of blood or scratch marks, which is okay. The only problem is that you still get the noise notification when somebody is unhooked, so you at least know where to start. For a few seconds, you and the killer can see each other's auras, so essentially it will bring the killer straight to you. Camaraderie, this doesn't activate until you're on a hook. If another survivor is within 16 meters of your location, the struggle phase timer is paused for a minimum of 26 seconds. Those are kind of important, that's why I went with the numbers this time. And then Second Wind, when you heal another survivor, this perk activates. Next time you're unhooked, you suffer from the broken status until the perk wears off. You automatically heal, though, after a little bit of time. That is... I don't like any of those perks, actually. Like, I can see them having their benefits, but definitely not my style of gameplay. Steve's gonna go into C tier. Yui gets... She's right here. Yui gets Lucky Break, which activates when you're in an injured state. You don't leave pools of blood or scratch marks for the first minute, but it can only be used once. You can see the auras of dropped pallets, and it takes a few seconds to get it put back up right. That's any means necessary. And then Breakout, which means if you're within 6 meters of a carried survivor, the haste effect kicks in, and the survivor being carried gets a boost to their wiggling speed. Solid enough. I'm still gonna say B tier, personally. Next up is Zarina, and Zarina has the perks Red Herring, which after you repair a Jenny for a few seconds, you can see its aura. It'll stay highlighted until it's fully repaired or you enter a locker. If you enter a locker, it emits a loud noise notification that leads the killer to the generator, which I guess could be really good with, like, flashbang. Off the record, which means you're quiet because it activates after you're unhooked. The killer can't see your aura, and the noise you make when injured is reduced. And then finally, for the people, you can only activate this perk at full health, but you can instantly heal a survivor without a medkit. The killer immediately becomes obsessed with you, and after using this perk, you suffer from the broken status effect for a while. Those are all kind of okay-ish. I don't like For the People too much, but the others are pretty alright, so because of that, B tier. For Cheryl, we have Soul Guard. After recovering from the dying state, you get Endurance, and any attack that should put you in the dying state will instead inflict a deep wound when you have 20 seconds to heal. Blood Pact, which means after you or the Obsession heal each other, you get the Haste status effect, which increases your movement. And then Repress Alliance, after spending up to 55 seconds repairing generators, this perk activates. You call upon the entity to block the generator you're repairing for 30 seconds, meaning the killer can't hinder its process, and all survivors can see the blocked generator. Now, I'm not gonna lie, that one is a pretty good perk. Repress Alliance, I have seen Chopsta, another person that plays with us, use this quite frequently, and it works quite well. The only thing that sucks is Blood Pact is kind of garbage unless you are in a Survive with Friends, because guess what? The other person is not gonna know that they need to run to you, and that's awful. And then also, Soul Guard, that's actually pretty alright, but Blood Pact is useless. I'm gonna put it into C. I'm just putting people who I don't know into D tier right now because that seems fair, because Felix is next. If they come up, I'll be able to move them, but who are you? Felix. Visionary, which you can see the auras of generators that are within a certain range. Upon completing a generator, the perk is disabled. So for Felix, you get Visionary, which means you can see the auras of generators that are within a certain range. After completing a generator, though, the perk is disabled. Not for the entire match, just for a certain amount of time, but that kind of sucks because then you're blind if you're relying on it. Desperate Measures, the speed at which you unhook and heal survivors is increased each time you save someone. Pretty good. And then Built to Last, when hiding in a locker with a depleted item, and if you stay in there, it will actually replenish the charge of the item to 99%. Now, this does drop by 33% each time. However, if you're a flashlight menace, that's actually pretty good. Desperate Measures is also pretty good because you get faster healing speed. The only one that sucks is Visionary, but it's still strong enough otherwise to get into the A tier. Elodie has Appraisal, which makes you start with 3 tokens. If you stumble upon an open chest, you can use a token to basically get a second check. You search through the chests up to 80% faster. Deception, instead of entering a locker, it flips open to possibly tell the killer where you are, and then when you do that, for the next few seconds, you leave no scratch marks or pools of blood, which essentially, again, could trick the killer. Power Struggle, and when being carried by the killer, Elodie can instigate Power Struggle if she fills up to a certain amount of her progression bar. Because of those, Deception is pretty good. However, I feel like more often than not, killers have kind of know better than to fall for it. I'm gonna put her stuff into C tier. Yunjin, Fast Track. I like the little cliff notes that it provides for some of these. If someone getting hooked, you couldn't care less, so long as it isn't you. But every time the killer hooks the survivor, you get 1 token. You can apparently hold a max of 27, which I don't know any way that you would ever get that many. But you get a 1% progression bonus on top of the additional bonus you get for passing a great skill check. Smash Hit, which means after stunning the killer with the pallet, you run faster than normal for a few seconds, but you become exhausted. And then finally, this perk, Self-Preservation, doesn't activate unless the fellow survivor is hit with a basic attack or special attack within a certain range of you. You don't emit a sound of pain, nor do you leave pools of blood for a little bit. Smash Hit is pretty good. Fast Track is okay. Self-Preservation, kind of useless because chances are if they are hitting somebody else with that, they're going to be focused on that person. You're going to go into C tier. Jill Valentine has Counterforce, which you cleanse totems faster, and then that increases another faster track after successfully cleansing it. You can also, after you cleanse one totem, you can see the aura of the one furthest away from you for a few seconds. Resurgence, after being unhooked, Jill instantly gains up to 50% of her healing process. And then Blast Mine, after repairing 66% of the generators, this perk activates, which is kind of nice. All of those are pretty decent, especially if you are up against a killer that has Pentimento and you want to be destroying totems. So, overall, I would say A tier. Next up is Leon, who has Bite the Bullet, When performing healing actions, this perk prevents you from emitting grunts of pain. And if you fail a healing skill check, there's no loud noise notification, which is pretty solid. Flashbang, you enter a locker and you create a flashbang grenade. And Rookie Spirit, which means for the remainder of the trial, you can see the auras of regressing generators, which is actually pretty good depending on the killer. Because of that, I'm going to give him A tier. Michaela, my girl. Michaela gets clairvoyance. Each time you cleanse a totem, if you have no item in your hand, you can see the auras of hooks, generators, exit gate switches, chests, and the hatch if they're within a certain range. Circle of Healing, which means healing speeds are increased, and they all get the self-care ability, which is still 10 times quicker than the actual self-care ability. This is going to be reworked very soon, so this is kind of a moot point. It's still going to be increased healing speeds, you just need somebody's help or a medkit. And then Shadow Step, you don't leave scratch marks. Killer can't see auras, and that's pretty incredible. Michaela is going to get an S tier. Boons are very busted. Jonah. Jonah has Overcome, which means that you get an additional few seconds to the initial movement speed boost when you're first injured. You do, however, become exhausted. Corrective Action. When a fellow survivor fails a skill check when working on a generator with you, a token is consumed, turning that failed skill check into an successful one. Pretty good. And then Boon Exponential, which means that you recover faster, and if you are knocked down, or you can get to that boon when you are knocked down, it means you immediately get back up. Again, if you have somebody that is playing the slugging game and isn't worried about boons, you can farm this pretty easily. Yeah, honestly, this is pretty good. Jonah's perks are quite good. Okay, so things are going to be a little kind of choppy here because the website that I was using does not list all of the other characters, so I'm kind of having to play things a little bit different than I had planned. I'm going to still be covering all of these. I truthfully don't know who all of these people are because I don't have all these survivors unlocked yet, but I'm going to try to cover as many of them as I possibly can. And up next is Hattie. Hattie has Inner Focus, which means that you can see the scratch marks of other survivors, which is actually pretty good. When a player loses a health state, that means that you can see the killer's aura. Residual Manifest, which means that players can rummage through an open chest once per trial and are guaranteed a basic flashlight. And then Overzealous increases the repair speed after cleansing a totem. Honestly, not horrible, but all of her perks are... To get the full effect out of Residual Manifest, you have to be good at a flashlight. For Overzealous, you have to be able to find a totem. And then for Inner Focus, they have to get hit. Inner Focus is the only one that is almost guaranteed. The other ones just rely too much on certain circumstances, and because of that, B tier. Next up, we have Vittorio. Vittorio has Potential Energy, which after repairing a generator, it allows you to basically get charges. You get tokens for this. Then, when repairing another generator, you can press the Activate Ability button, which essentially will give you a lot of progress for that particular generator. It takes a lot to activate, but I have seen it used pretty well. Fog-wise, if you hit a great skill check, you can see the killer's aura, and then Quick Gambit, when the player is being chased within 24 meters of a Jenny being repaired, the repair speed of the survivors repairing will actually end up increasing. Those actually aren't too bad. I'm gonna give it a B tier because the Potential Energy just takes a very long time to end up being useful. Most killers, if they hear that people are still repairing a generator when they are nearby, they're gonna break off and go to the generator. Yoichi gets parental guidance. After stunning the killer, they will have their scratch marks, grunts of pain, and pools of blood suppressed for a few seconds. Empathetic connection. Injured survivors will see the player's aura, which means that they can be found faster, and they'll also be healed faster. And then Boon Dark Theory. Survivors have a small haste effect, which isn't that great, but still pretty alright. Overall, his perks are okay. The only problem is there are better ways, like there are better perks that allow you to suppress your scratch marks, grunts of pain, and blood pools. Empathetic Connection's pretty alright. Honestly though, I'm gonna put him in a C tier. Ada Wong. Ada gets Wiretap, which means that you can tap a generator, and the killer, if they are within a certain range of that, is revealed to all survivors. Reactive Healing. When a survivor loses a health state and they're in an injured state, they will be given 40, 45, or 50% of their missing health progression. And then Low Profile. When the player is the only survivor left in the trial, their scratch marks, pools of blood, and grunts of pain are suppressed, which is pretty important when you're the last one alive. Overall, pretty solid. Reactive Healing isn't super great, but Wiretap has its moments. I'm gonna give her an A tier. Next up is Rebecca Chambers, who has Better Than New. After completing a healing action on another survivor, the player's action speeds in Blessing, Cleansing, Healing, and Unlocking are increased. Reassurance. If within a certain distance of a hooked survivor, players can halt the sacrifice progress for some amount of time. If they enter the struggle phase, their skill checks are paused for this. I've actually seen this used very well. And then Hyper Focus. Players gain a token each time they succeed a great skill check in repairing or healing for a max of 6 tokens. It increases the skill check trigger by 4%, skill check rotation speeds by 4%, and skill check progression up quite a bit. So, Hyper Focus, you have to be very good to be able to keep up with it. Reassurance is pretty good, and then Better Than New is good if you are able to heal somebody. I would say solid B tier. Alright, for Thalita, she gets the perks Cut Loose. After performing a rushed vault in a chase, this perk activates. Your rushed vaults are now silent for the next few seconds, and successfully performing a rush vault actually resets the timer. Friendly Competition. Whenever you finish repairing a Jenny with at least one other survivor, it activates. You and the survivors who finished repairing the Jennies get a increased repair speed for the next amount of time. They can only have one instance of this perk's ability active at a time, so it doesn't stack like Prove Thyself. And then Teamwork, Power of 2. When you finish healing another survivor, you both move faster as long as you stay within 12 meters of the other survivor. It can only be triggered once every separate amount of times that I'm not going to read, and they can only be affected by one teamwork. These are okay perks. It very much forces you to rely on other people. Because of that, I'm going to put it into B tier. And then we have Renato, who has a background player. After you unhook another survivor, break into a sprint, and it lasts for a few seconds. This perk cannot be used while suffering from exhaustion, though, so keep that in mind. Blood Rush activates when you are one hook away from instant death while healthy, running, and suffering from exhaustion. Press the active ability to lose a health state and recover from exhaustion instantly and gain the broken status effect. You are automatically healed after a certain amount of time. Being put into the dying state will cancel the healing effect. Activating Blood Rush will disable it for the remainder of the trial. Honestly, that is a lot of information to be able to try and use this effectively. That is way too much. And then Teamwork, Collective Stealth. When another survivor finishes healing you, you both leave no scratch marks as long as you stay within 12 meters of each other. C tier. Like, it's just way too much. I don't like it. Alright, so I did spend some time just to kind of make sure that I got everybody. I'm 99% sure all the people that I have put in the Who Are You tier are just different skins of somebody that we have already covered. They're gonna stay there because I don't feel like putting them into the correct tier. But this is how I feel with the certain ones. S tier obviously being the best of the best, A being pretty good, B being situational, and C being meh at best. Again, just in my opinion, the good news is with all of these, you are able to mix and match and kind of make your own, especially once you get to level 3. You can share any perk with anybody, so that's pretty cool. And you know what they say. If you like the video, even if you didn't like the video, think about hitting the like and subscribe button because it helps me out. And until next time, everybody, peace out.